So welcome to our class today on the Bartenieff fundamental principle of body level phrasing. And this we can explore in a few different ways, which I will talk us through. What to say about this? This is very much about the kind of inner connectivity of our bodies, so less about sort of even kinespheric space or general space, and really more about kind of inner sphere and the connections of the body and the body parts. So there's really an emphasis on that today. And we can phrase our movement in many different ways. As you know, it can start anywhere and it can travel anywhere and it can get interrupted along the way. And you can choose to do this quite consciously and quite deliberately, but largely we have these patterns and sequences of movement through us happening quite habitually. And the class today will be about sometimes really indulging in what is referred to as successive sequential sequencing, so movement that's traveling through anatomical order. And then sometimes we'll take more of a simultaneous approach to the phrasing. So this is simultaneous initiation of many joints at once happening. It might be all the joints of the body, or it might be just like 3 or 4, but there's, you know, something about the simultaneity of the phrasing. And then we'll also talk about and move sequential sequencing, which means happening in an order, one thing after the next, but not necessarily through anatomical order. So, you know, my shoulder goes and my elbow goes and my head goes and maybe my eyes go and then my fingers go. So things are happening in a sequence, but not through a very obvious movement through the rest of the body. Now, there's a few things to say about this, and there are other kinds of phrasing that we'll do as well. Probably do some body level phrasing related to the developmental patterns. We can talk about head to tail, tail to head, right to left, upper to lower, you know, this kind of thing. But it's worth, before we get moving, just to say why we might do this. And I think I've already hinted at it a little bit, but this sense of when you start to muck around or play with the initiation and the sequencing of movement, you start to maybe discover more about your preferences, the ways in which you have been sequencing your movement. Let's start by rolling, activating some flow sensing and weight sensing. Coming into the whole of your body, all the parts. Rolling on the ground so you can sense the different surfaces of your body. How the container of the skin holds in the contents, but also shifts and mobilizes. So we don't have rigid contents, but neither do we have a rigid container. Coming into an awareness of your three-dimensionality, of how front surface becomes side, becomes back. And you might consider how you sense your core today, what core means for you in this moment, whether that's a sense of the organs and the core of the torso being soft tissue, or maybe a sense of the spinal core. As we've spoken about before, core can mean many different things. The core of the bones, or the whole of the nervous system flowing through your body. But we'll play a little bit more with this sense of spinal core today. And if you feel like you've been more into kind of flow and fluidity, give yourself a chance to come into a bit more of your weight by condensing and pressing, activating your weight into the ground to find maybe a little rhythmic pulse. And if you've been really into weight sensing through stillness or through some pressing and rocking, make sure that you connect also into flow sensing with this ongoingness of your body. And breath helps us with both of these underlying bodily experiences of self in relationship to gravity, in relationship to base of support. And let's map, as you carry on rolling and mobilizing, mapping this journey from navel center to 6 limbs, to this radial symmetry of your navel center, connection to top of skull, connection to tailbone. And as I say it, you can visualize it in your mind's eye, as well as moving that connection for yourself. Navel center through to the palm. And navel center through to the other palm, through the shoulder, through the arm. And navel center traveling through pelvis, through the left leg to the left sole of the foot. And navel center through right side of pelvis, through right leg, through to right sole of foot. So these 6 limbs with navel center as the kind of center of the wheel. And we can consider upper body as being navel center to skull, through to shoulder blades, or navel center to shoulder blades, to arms and to hands. You might find a bit of clarity for yourself of what upper body means. Sometimes when you hear it used, people think about it being more just the arms, but let's really include the spine through into the skull. So the upper body of rib cage, collarbones, breastbone, shoulder blades, upper arm bones, elbows, lower arm bones, bones of the hands. So taking whatever movement you would like with your upper body, it might bring you to sitting, or you might be still very low to the ground lying. It's totally fine. And then let's go ahead and activate a sense of lower body. And so navel center to tailbone, bones of the pelvis, and the bones of the legs, the long femur, the long thigh bone, through the knee, through the lower legs, the bones of the lower legs, and the bones of the feet. Playing a little with lower body. And I'm not being particularly specific about any sequencing right now. I'm simply naming some patterns of connectivity. Whilst you come into really a sense of your flow and your weight in these different parts and how they can organize. Okay, let's take lying on the floor with our knees bent in the supine crook position. Take a moment to settle the weight of the lower body. Maybe place your hands on your thighs so you can press a little bit into the thighs. To give a little bit of pressure from your shoulder blades through your hands, through the bones of the leg, into the feet. So that feet can maybe feel like they're being filled with the weight of the legs. You can do that a few times, pressing the soft tissue of the thighs slightly towards your knees. And you might feel a little stretch of the lower back here. You're not wanting to push so hard that you really tip your pelvis, but maybe you notice the skin of the lower back and the tissues there also having some little stretch. And we're doing this simply to feel a slight change of pressure into the soles of the feet, so the lower body can settle. And then take your arms up over your head. Take a little reach, maybe see your hands. Take a little mobilization of the wings of the arms. We're going to take this into something more specific in a minute, but just as you're lying here with this quiet lower body, what can the upper body do? So without allowing the movement to sequence through into the lower body is more passive but also stable, so it's activated but not overly tense. What can the upper body do in terms of mobilizing, finding the space of the upper body, even sliding, rolling, peeling away from the ground. And you might deliberately rock side to side with the upper body to feel the shoulder blades. Or turn the head from side to side to feel the weight of the skull. And let's explore a little bit of arm circle here. So I'm going to start by sweeping my arm up over my head and down to my side. And I'm going to imagine that this is coming from my shoulder blade. Lifting my shoulder blade to lift my arm. Lowering my shoulder blade to lower my arm. And my upper spine and my skull know that this is happening. I'm not totally binding in my upper body. There is some residual movement from this initiation of shoulder blade into the spine. And my lower arm feels quite floppy, my hand is quite relaxed. Okay, that's enough of that. And then release the weight of the arm on the ground. And play with that same action on the left side. To lift the arm, sense of lifting the shoulder blade, lowering the shoulder blade to lower the arm. In some techniques, there's an emphasis on keeping the shoulder blade down to lift the arm, which you can for sure do. But this time, let's allow the shoulder blade to really move on the back. And I've got this unexpected sequencing, or at least, or maybe expected, into my skull, a little bit in my neck. It's a bit unpredictable, I think that's what I mean. As this arm moves, if I'm really relaxed in my skull, there's kind of unpredictable sequencing of movement that's not a deliberate action, but as a result of the initiation of the shoulder blade. Okay, leaving that left arm somewhere comfortable by your side. Let's take the same initiation of the arm circle beginnings of arm circle. Let's lift the arm over the head. So initiating at the shoulder blade to take the arm over the head. And then initiating at the elbow, crossing the arm in front of you. And your head might even turn here to see the hand. And then your hand is going to activate to draw a circle down to the pelvis, arcing your arm back out to the side. And again, shoulder blade, elbow, hand. Shoulder blade, elbow, hand. Shoulder blade, elbow. And we'll do that one more time. And then carry on the arm circle this time, trying to sense the palm moving first. So of course the shoulder blade is moving, but can you have a sense of initiation of this arm circle more from the hand now? I mean, maybe it feels still like the shoulder blade is initiating. But how is it for you to sense palm leading this circle? And then going the other direction. And my skull is rolling as I do this. There's a slight sense of watching my hand. So my eyes are gently open, sensing my hand leading in space. With my eyes softly fold. And then release the weight of that right arm. Take a moment of stillness to sense your shoulder blades supported by the ground. Checking in with lower body, maybe even some little stamps. A little rock of the pelvis, maybe a little shake of the legs. And then we'll find the left side. Shoulder blade, elbow, palm. Shoulder blade, elbow, palm. Shoulder blade, elbow crosses, so the arm is pretty close to your chest and your eyes can see the palm. And an exhale as the arm crosses in front of you might help a little bit more condensing there. Take another one of those, shoulder blade, elbow, and the palm activates to take this circle in space, and then taking some arm circles with the whole of this wing of the arm, breastbone softening. Sense of leading through the palm. And so, of course, more of the arm is involved, not only the palm, because of course it's connected. You can't move the palm really without engaging through the shoulder girdle. But there's a sense of the palm leading. As I keep re-emphasizing the palm leading in space, I even sense the skin of my palm start to kind of tingle and become a little bit more active in my awareness, taking the arm circle in the other direction. But maybe that was already there for you in sensing your palm. Or maybe there's no particularly distinct shift in your sensation. Even if you take your mind's eye to the palm, see it, touch the ground with it even. Great. And then settling the weight of the left arm onto the ground. Let's take an exhale and a little curl of the skull, easing towards the navel center so that the arms would drag behind you, and then releasing the weight of the head down. So consider it a sense of top of head leading towards the navel center, bringing collarbones forward. Of course, the core is engaging in terms of the abdominals, but I'm trying to think of it really initiating from top of skull, rather than considering these to be some sort of sit-up. Let's activate through the arms next time as you take top of head to navel center, pressing with the arms, coming into a ball. And then from our little ball, let's take a knee drop to one side and take a prop on the right forearm or the left forearm, depending on where you are relative to what you can see. And let's refind arm circle here. Now, let's find this just at the level of the arm. So I'm not engaging my spine or my skull much. I'm just taking the arm circle, initiating at my whole arm. So shoulder blade, palm, very active, elbow not totally extended. But I'm really trying to inhibit the rest of the sequencing through my spine, through my pelvis, through my body. I mean, my arm can go quite far into the back space, depending on how your flexibility is. Maybe it doesn't feel like it goes very far, and this is an occasion to sense that. And we've got this gradated rotation, obviously, through the length of the arm in order to find this circling. But there's no movement happening through the rest of my spine. So you can really feel the part of the arm, of the upper arm into the shoulder socket, but not really so much of the shoulder girdle. Maybe the shoulder blade, but the collarbone, yeah, it's doing something. But if we think of the shoulder girdle as being also the opposite side, the other collarbone and the other shoulder blade, how is it to take an arm circle now with a little bit more pressure through the underneath arm? And maybe more of upper body can participate through rib cage. Sense of rolling the rib cage towards where the arm is going. And I'm not really taking so much of a flexion through my spine, but there is this rotation through the upper spine. And then you can take the other direction. And maybe more of the spine can find a little flexion, extension as you take this now. Seeing the back space as the arm comes over. Try not to make yourself dizzy. Go nice and slow, keep breathing. And then the next time you come down, let's take a spiral, take a twist. Couple of breaths here in stillness in this shape. And then unwind. Take a moment to sense your two sides of the upper. Take whatever movement you would like through the arms. And then let's scoop into a ball, come back to the big X. Inhale here. Find the end of the exhale. Simultaneous flexion of lower legs, lower limbs and upper limbs. So what was that? That was a flexion of everything together, simultaneous. Core, periphery, bringing you up. And then let's take a little knee drop to the other side. Supporting yourself on your other forearm. And let's differentiate again this arm circle, occurring at the level of the shoulder socket. And you might feel that you're inhibiting something of where else in your body wants to join in. But let's for a moment see what it's like to have a sense of that palm shoulder blade relationship. They are mobilizing, sure. And there is this gentle rotation. So the circle is not kind of flat here, it's definitely going behind me. And then in front of me. Collarbones, of course, accommodating this a little bit, but much more on the active arm than on the supporting side. And just notice how this feels for you to kind of inhibit some of the other kinds of movement that could be possible. You might get the opportunity to see that your hand can turn. And then allow more movement. Allow that underside of the shoulder girdle, the other shoulder blade, and the other collarbone to join in, pressing into the lower arm. And the rib cage can start to roll sideways, so this sense of opening of rib cage as you take the arm up and behind you. And then you might start also finding more of the upper limb of the spine, seeing the space behind you. And taking the arm circle in the other direction. So we have more rotation through the spine and more flexion or extension. A sense of underside arm supporting the arm circle, traveling from that base of support to mobilize the upper arm. And then when you've had enough of that, let's take a little spiral. Finding more of a deep stretch. And then gently coming out of the ground. Sensing your two wings of the arms of the upper body with this spine, with these very mobile ribs. And take for yourself some explorations of this upper body. Lower body feeling perhaps a little bit neglected right now, but we'll get to that in a minute. The upper body might sweep you onto the ground, press into the ground. You might find that it's hand leading, head following, or maybe every hands and head, spine and elbows, finding more of a simultaneous flexion, extension. Classic successive sequencing we can play with is palm, elbow, shoulder, shoulder, elbow, wrist. This kind of snaky wave for ourselves, and might be a move you've played with in another kind of space. Can be nice to play with here for this sense of successive sequencing through the body parts. And then you can take that into the skull. How is it to find a sequencing from head through the torso, through to the tail? Head leading, rest of spine following. So coming now into your head-tail connectivity. In whatever way makes sense for you. It might be useful to stay on all fours and play with a simultaneous flexion and extension through the vertebrae. Or you might find this snaky thing, head coming forward, torso following. Or you might find that coming from the lower body, sense of rippling through. Or maybe side, side. And you can find that traveling you sideways, rolling pelvis going, and skull following. Great. And then let's come back to lying in the supine hook position. And let's take thigh lift here. So upper body can be fairly stable and quiet. Inhaling to prepare. Let's initiate right at the navel center. Exhaling, float the thigh up, softening at the hip socket. Inhaling, pushing your foot down. Exhaling, core initiation, floating the foot. Inhaling, sending the heel into the ground. So very easy, softening of the hip socket, floating of the thigh. Exhaling, standing back through your foot. A few of those in your own breath rhythm. And then let's take soles of the feet into the ground and a little rock from the feet, rocking pelvis and rocking skull. So often we do a heel rock with the legs extended. Let's do a heel rock initiating at the lower with bent knees through the whole soles of the foot. And if you feel like your hamstrings are having to work really, really hard to make this happen, you can also explore it with extended legs. And so we're steering from the heel bones. There's not a deliberate action of the tailbone, but the tailbone is rocking a little, or back of sacrum rather, is rocking on the ground. Knees can bend a little. Great. Now let's play with a pre-thigh lift. So here, exhaling. Again, same initiation, navel yielding into ground. Heel drawn towards the sitting bone. Inhaling to slide the heel away. Exhaling, sliding heel towards the sitting bone. Inhaling to return. We can initiate right at the navel center and allow that sequencing through to the heel. Sense of navel drawing the heel towards it. And this time, send your attention into the sole of the foot and initiate also with that breath support. But initiate now from the sole of the foot, coming towards pelvis and reaching away. And notice if that changes something in your sensation. Still that sense of exhaling and deepening in the hip crease. But that the sole of the foot is actively coming towards pelvis. And now let's mobilize two knees together. So two heels slide in towards sitting bones. And extending. And let's add on a rotation through the knees. So as the knees slide, heels slide, the knees are going to rotate in one direction and then the other direction. And when you increase the tempo of that, you might find the underlying head-tail rock. So lower leading, and now upper body following, as this rock travels through into skull. And if you place the emphasis of the extension through the feet, maybe you travel towards your feet. And then take a little break, take a little shake, recuperate however you would like from that lower body mobilizing. Recuperation could mean stillness, it could mean changing base of support, it could mean sitting up. Great. Checking in with how the whole of you feels after these differentiation of the parts, finding these different coordinations. And in your own way, just mobilizing lower a little bit for yourself. Tailbone and heels. We have this simultaneous flexion and rotation through the lower body. Now heels might come off the ground, you might find more of the ball of the pelvis rocking you side to side. Play here with whatever you feel like doing with the lower body. And you might feel like it initiates through all the joints of the legs and simultaneously. Or maybe you can feel again soles of the feet becoming active. Okay, let's go onto our backs and find navel center initiating to roll us to one side in a small ball, so allowing the limbs, the upper and the lower, to come with you. So really at the level of the spine, starting us off, and the limbs can just slide along in their own time. And now let's place the emphasis on the arms and the legs as well as the spine being equally active. So that condensing happening everywhere. And that expanding, starting in every single joint. So no part of you gets left behind. And so even fingers and toes having this curling in, curling back out experience. And that might take you onto your front or onto your side. Or maybe into sitting, back into lying. Nice. So I just need to check the time. Great. We'll do two more things. The next thing I'd like to explore is diagonal X rolls. So here we're going to be putting upper and lower initiation together with this sense of crossing through the midline of the spine. So our phrasing will have a different kind of initiation from a few different possibilities here. Let's start with the right lower, so my right leg, and I will take a thigh lift, free thigh lift towards my sitting bone, and I can even take my foot off the ground if I like, and then extend it across my midline towards the other diagonal. And I'm going to reach through that foot to roll myself to my front. So to come back, I mean, I might also undo my upper arm, but to come back, I will start at my right upper, my right wing of the right arm. So I will turn my head to see my right arm. And my left arm already might be near my head to come underneath, or it might go underneath my waist. I'm going to have to figure that out in a minute. But first of all, seeing the right arm and lifting from the shoulder blade. If I lift from my hand, that's also possible. I could lift from my elbow if I wanted. But I'm going to try and lift really from my shoulder blade. And keep seeing my hand over my head like we were doing the arm circles. Trying here not to arch the spine, but that sense of rolling the ribcage. Shoulder blade meets the ground. Lower body coming along for the right. That leg can slide in again. And slide back out. So, all of that on the other side. Left leg, knee flexes, heel comes towards sitting bone. And extending that leg across the midline, reaching out through the toes. Now I'm here kind of resisting with my lower body to find that sequencing from lower to upper, through my spine, through into the shoulder girdle, rolling to my front steps. And then when I arrive, seeing the left arm, and I'm going to try and lift my arm from my shoulder blade. But I could also, as I'm here, see how it is to lift from the elbow or from the hand. Oh, and they all feel slightly different. What I'm trying not to do is use the muscles of my thumb to lift my arm, right? So sometimes this happens and people start to clench. Can you find shoulder blade lifting to lift the arm? I'm going to have to adjust my underneath arm. Keep seeing the hand, turning the head, rolling the ribcage round. Arm finds the ground, shoulder blade finds the ground, back of sacrum finds the ground. That knee is going to bend in and then return. Hopefully you can see me. I hope that's clear. I'm just going to show it again and talk it through again. So lower leading, right foot, right side of the foot active, heels sliding towards pelvis, heeling off the ground. Big toe directing me across the midline towards my opposite diagonal here. And then I'm going to keep reaching through that long internal rotation of the right leg, traveling into pelvis, into spine, into shoulders, to roll me to my front surface, or to roll to be supine. And then I'm going to lift
lift the right wing of the arm. I might practice that a few times to see how it feels to really activate through the shoulder blade rather than through the hand. Shoulder blade lifts to adjust my skull. Keep rolling across. Upper leading through the spine. And that foot's going to slide towards navel center. Again, lower leading. Extension through the leg. Reaching through the toe to find this sequencing through that whole left body part, left side. And then I find my front. And then lifting the wing of the left arm. Underneath arm comes underneath my skull. As I turn, skull, shoulder blade, rib cage. And then we'll find this condensing of the lower leg to extend. Go through that in your own time once more, and then we'll reverse the pattern. So lower leg leading. Upper body, right upper to take you over. Okay, so the next time you find yourself on your back, let's reverse the sequencing from prone to supine. Let's start with the hand leading this. So really from the palm that we activated earlier, peeling hand, elbow, shoulder, reaching across with a little bit of a diagonal pull. Lower body is quiet for as long as possible as you reach your way across to lie on your front. And then from here, we'll slide right leg towards left. Now I'm going to initiate this at the level of my inner thigh, if that's possible. So a sense of narrowing in pelvis. Right leg sliding towards left. And then I'm going to lift the leg across the midline. And then here, start rotating. Little toe activates. Rolling across the heel. Finding the back of the sacrum, then the rib cage, then the shoulder blade. And then the arm unfolds. Left fingertips peeling away from the ground, then the elbow, then the arm lifts up across. Reaching across to the right hand, head keeps turning. Finding the lower body delaying as long as possible to find front of the body supported by the ground. And then sliding left leg towards right. And then lifting leg very gently over the right. Getting the toes to the ground if that's possible. And then starting to turn the whole of that left leg out, rotating across the heel. Left side of pelvis, then rib cage, then shoulder, and then the arm circles over the head. In your own time, a few more of those. Right hand successively sequencing, wrist, elbow, shoulder, head, reaching across. And then right leg sliding towards left. To unwind you. If you feel like you're straining at any moment, pause, reverse, exhale, reinitiate. Keep turning your skull, rolling the ribcage to get yourself from your back to your side to your front. Avoiding flexing through the spine here by already finding the heel on the ground and the underside arm coming back under the skull. And then you're on your back. Let's bring yourself up through the center. Take a little knee drop onto all fours. Crawling a little bit and eventually coming up to sound. Taking a walk in your space when you're ready. And seeing how walking feels, of lower body leading. Feeling this traveling through the spine to the opposite arm. And then allow yourself to take whatever movement you feel like doing. And let's have a sense of starting it in the feet. Starting from the lower body into the upper body. Pressing the ground away. Seeing if that can travel through into spine, into the arms. Lower body leading in whatever way that makes sense to you. Might be condensing into the core. Might be reaching away from navel center. Lower mobilizing now with a little bit more weight shift, pressure into the ground, maybe some balancing. And shift the sequencing from lower to upper into lower. So head, hands leading, and lower body following. We had all this work with the arm circle earlier, maybe that supports you now in finding upper body leading. And we just ended with diagonal X rolls, which means the upper body leading might travel through a cross-lateral connection into the lower. And then let's find some moments of simultaneity. So all joints working at once. Or as many joints as you possibly can. Activating. Some might be flexing, some might be extending, but there's a sense of simultaneous activation through the whole body. And now let's play with successive sequencing. So, let's play with sequential sequencing, where things can happen out of anatomical order. One thing might become the next thing with successive sequencing, or you might start another phrase off in another part of your body. One part might activate and then another part takes over. Several parts happening at once. So things could be happening out of anatomical order, but you might still be feeling that some part of your body is carrying on the previous initiation. Remembering it's totally fine to follow your impulse.
Great. And if you're not on the ground, bring your body down to the ground and find a little heel rock just to recuperate, to feel a sense of the whole body connecting together again. So just a little moment of simultaneous sequencing and sequential sequencing then, to allow the impulses of the body to take over. And now enjoy a bit of heel rock to connect to the whole of your body again. And slow it down. Slow it down and slow it down. What is the smallest heel rock you can make to still sense a sequencing from heels and ankles, through legs, pelvis, spine, skull, even through shoulder blades, arms to hands. And eventually find stillness, allowing the weight of your body to be held by the ground. Lovely, great work. So rolling to one side when you're ready, and let's gather back at the computers for a check-in and a chat.